As Benson entered the gym center, his eyes scanned the room until they landed on Vera. She was engrossed in her workout, her determination palpable. Benson couldn't tear his gaze away. It was as if time had stopped, and all he could see was her. Heart racing, he mustered up the courage to approach her. With each step closer, his nerves jangled, but his determination prevailed. Finally, he stood before her, a nervous smile playing on his lips. "Hi, I'm Benson," he said. Vera looked up, surprised but not unkindly. "Hey there, I'm Vera," she replied, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. They talked, laughed, and found a connection amidst the clatter of weights and the hum of treadmills. Benson couldn't believe his luck. Vera was everything he had ever hoped for. Smart, funny, and beautiful. Before parting ways, Benson gathered his courage once more. "Could I get your number? Maybe we could grab coffee sometime?" he asked. Vera smiled, and her eyes sparkled with warmth. "I'd like that," she said, and they exchanged numbers. Their relationship blossomed from there. Coffee dates turned into dinner dates, and soon they were inseparable. Benson knew from that first moment he saw her at the gym center that Vera was someone special, someone he wanted to spend his life with. Benson and Vera's relationship continued to deepen as they spent more time together, discovering new facets of each other's personalities. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, and Benson found himself falling more deeply in love with Vera. After 3 months of blissful companionship, Benson realized that Vera was everything he had ever wanted in a partner. He knew in his heart that he didn't want to spend another moment without her by his side. With nerves tingling and excitement bubbling inside him, Benson decided to take the leap and propose to Vera. On a beautiful evening, under the twinkling stars and surrounded by the soft glow of candlelight, Benson poured his heart out to Vera, expressing his love and devotion. With trembling hands, he presented her with a ring, a symbol of his commitment and the promise of a lifetime together. Vera's eyes shimmered with tears of joy as she listened to Benson's heartfelt words. Overwhelmed with emotion, she eagerly accepted his proposal, sealing their love with a tender kiss in that magical moment. As Benson and Vera strolled through the park one sunny afternoon, Benson realized it was time to take the next step in their relationship. With a nervous excitement, he suggested, "Vera, how about we visit my parents this weekend? I think it's time for them to meet you before we dive into wedding plans." Vera's eyes lit up with joy and she squeezed his hand, agreeing wholeheartedly. As Benson beamed with pride, presenting Vera to his family, she attempted to mask her discomfort with a warm smile. However, as her eyes met Benson's father's, her facade faltered. There, standing before her, was the very man who had been her secret benefactor, her sugar daddy. The room seemed to shrink around her as a wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. Guilt, shame, and fear mingled with disbelief and a tinge of resentment towards Benson for being unaware of their connection. She fought to maintain her composure, but her mind raced, desperately seeking an escape from this surreal situation. Vera struggled to find her voice as Benson's father extended his hand in greeting, his eyes betraying a flicker of recognition. With each passing second, the weight of her discovery grew heavier, threatening to suffocate her. As the awkward silence stretched on, Vera realized that her carefully constructed world was on the brink of collapse. She longed to disappear, to erase the truth and rewrite the narrative unfolding before her. But faced with the reality of Benson's expectant gaze and the scrutiny of his family, she knew that there was no easy way out of this tangled web of secrets. Benson's father put on a facade of pleasant surprise upon meeting Vera, hiding the years of clandestine meetings they shared. He congratulated the couple, silently grappling with the irony of his own situation. Deep down, he knew his silence was a self-preserving compromise, one that safeguarded his own secrets. As Benson's father shook Vera's hand, a rush of conflicting emotions swept over him. He couldn't help but recall the countless moments they had shared behind closed doors, the stolen glances and whispered promises. Yet here she stood, poised and composed, as if their past was nothing more than a figment of his imagination. With practiced ease, he masked his turmoil with a warm smile, offering his congratulations to the couple. Deep down, he marveled at the intricacies of fate, how it intertwined their lives in such unexpected ways. Every word he uttered felt like a carefully constructed facade, concealing the truth that threatened to unravel the delicate balance he had meticulously maintained for years. As the evening unfolded, he found himself navigating a labyrinth of secrets and half-truths, all the while maintaining the illusion of an impartial observer. As Vera grappled with the shocking revelation that Benson, her fiancé, was the son of her sugar daddy, Mr. Anthony, her mind became a battleground of conflicting emotions and thoughts. On one hand, there was disbelief. How could she have missed such a crucial connection? She had spent 4 years of her life entangled in a relationship with Mr. Anthony, relying on him for financial support, career opportunities, and lavish vacations. Yet never once had she suspected that the man who had been her benefactor was also the father of her beloved Benson. Then there was the fear of the unknown. What did this revelation mean for her relationship with Benson? Had he been aware of his father's involvement with her all along? Or was he just as blindsided by the truth as she was? And how would this newfound knowledge affect their future together? Would Benson still want to marry her if he ever finds out the truth about her and his father? But perhaps the most daunting question of all was what to do next. Should she confront Mr. Anthony and Benson and risk losing everything she had worked so hard to build? Or should she continue to keep up the facade, burying the truth deep down inside and pretending that everything was still the same? Mr. Anthony demanded to meet with Vera. He pleaded with her. Please reconsider marrying Benson. I can't bear to lose you. I'll do anything to keep you. But Vera stood firm, explaining, I understand your feelings, but my decision is final. Benson is everything I want in a partner. Anthony's desperation grew. How can you marry my son, Vera? Please reason with me. You can't marry Benson. I understand your concerns, Mr. Anthony, she said gently. But my relationship with Benson is separate from our past. He's the man I love, and I can't imagine my life without him. She explained how she hadn't known Benson was Mr. Anthony's son when they first met. And by the time she found out, her feelings for Benson had deepened beyond any previous arrangements. I'm sorry, Vera continued, but I can't let my past dictate my future happiness. Vera, he pleaded, I've grown fond of you. I can't bear the thought of losing you to marriage. Let's find a way to make this work. However, Vera remained resolute. I appreciate your feelings, she replied firmly, but my heart belongs to Benson. He's the one I want to spend my life with, no matter the consequences. Despite Mr. Anthony's attempts to persuade her otherwise, Vera remained steadfast in her decision to marry Benson. Mr. Anthony watched as Benson and Vera exchanged vows, their love radiating like a beacon of hope amidst the shadows of his own indiscretions. In the quiet moments that followed, he couldn't shake the nagging doubt that lingered in the recesses of his mind. Would his silence come back to haunt him, a silent specter lurking in the shadows of their newfound happiness? Only time would tell, but for now he chose to bask in the illusion of normalcy, a fleeting respite from the tangled web of deceit that threatened to ensnare them all. Vera found herself trapped in a web of deceit and desire. Despite marrying Benson, she couldn't sever the ties with his father, who held a dark secret over her head. He threatened to expose her secret if she ever said no to him. Vera sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the pregnancy test in her trembling hand. The 2 pink lines confirmed what she had suspected for days. But instead of the expected joy, a heavy sadness settled in her heart. She couldn't distinguish between Benson, her husband, and his father, Mr. Anthony, as the possible father of the child. The realization that she had been intimate with both men since marrying Benson intensified her turmoil. Tears welled up in her eyes as she grappled with the tangled web of deceit and betrayal woven around her. Now, as she sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of her secret threatening to crush her, she couldn't shake the image of both men in her mind. The thought of betraying Benson, the man she had vowed to love, with Mr. Anthony, his own father, filled her with a deep sense of shame. Benson's heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and determination as he wrestled with the growing sense of unease. He replayed recent interactions with Vera in his mind, searching for clues that might explain her sudden aloofness. Their once vibrant connection now felt strained, punctuated by moments of silence and distant gazes. Despite his attempts to ignore his suspicions, Benson found himself unable to dismiss the nagging feeling that something was amiss. Late nights at the office, unexplained phone calls, and hastily concealed text messages fueled his growing paranoia. Each new piece of evidence seemed to deepen the divide between them, eroding the trust that had once been the foundation of their marriage. Desperate for answers, Benson mustered the courage to confront Vera, his voice trembling slightly as he broached the subject. "Is there something you're not telling me, Vera? You seem different lately." Her response, a dismissive wave of the hand and a forced smile, only served to fuel his doubts further. Benson couldn't shake off the feeling of suspicion creeping into his mind. Despite Vera's reassurances, her distant behavior raised red flags. He found himself questioning their relationship, wondering if there was someone else occupying her thoughts. As doubts consumed him, Benson resolved to uncover the truth, determined to confront whatever awaited him at the end of his investigation. Was she hiding something from him? And if so, what could possibly drive her to betray the vows they had sworn to uphold? As the days passed, Benson's suspicions festered like a wound left untended. Sleep became elusive as his mind raced with endless possibilities, each more painful than the last. Could Vera be cheating on him? The mere thought sent a shiver down his spine, yet he couldn't bring himself to confront the truth head-on. With each passing day, Benson withdrew further into himself, the weight of uncertainty bearing down on his shoulders like a burden too heavy to bear. And as he stared into the abyss of doubt, he couldn't help but wonder if their once perfect marriage was destined to crumble before his very eyes. As Vera's voice trembled through the phone, Anthony felt a whirlwind of emotions sweep over him. Shock, uncertainty danced in his mind. He struggled to find the right words, his thoughts racing as he tried to comprehend the weight of what she had just revealed. Meanwhile, in the quiet of their home, Benson's ears strained to catch every syllable of Vera's conversation. The revelation hung heavy in the air, casting a shadow over their once solid foundation. Vera, unaware of Benson's presence, poured out her inner turmoil to Anthony while Benson grappled with his own emotions in silence. It was a moment suspended in time, where the fate of their relationships hung delicately in the balance, waiting for the next move to tip the scales one way or another. Benson quietly left unnoticed. He had heard everything Vera said on the phone. That she was pregnant but didn't know who owns the pregnancy between the person she was talking to or his son. He wondered in his mind what she meant by his son. Could Vera be sleeping with my father? Benson asked himself. Oh no, I don't want to believe this. I might just run mad. Benson's mind raced as he processed the shocking revelation. He struggled to comprehend the possibility that Vera, his wife, might be involved with his own father. The weight of the revelation pressed down on him like a suffocating blanket, leaving him feeling dizzy and disoriented. With each step he took, he felt as though the ground beneath him was slipping away. He needed time alone to sort through his thoughts, to come to terms with the possibility that his world was unraveling before his very eyes. Without a word to Vera, he quietly slipped out of the house, his footsteps muffled by the carpeted floor. He couldn't bear to confront her, not yet. He needed to find solace in the stillness of the night, to grapple with the truth in the privacy of his own mind. Outside, the cool night air enveloped him, offering a brief respite from the suffocating weight of his thoughts. He wandered aimlessly through the darkened streets, his mind consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, confusion, anger, and heartbreak waged a fierce battle within him, threatening to tear him apart from the inside out. Hours passed in a blur as Benson wandered through the silent streets, lost in his own private torment. Eventually, exhaustion overtook him, and he found himself seeking refuge in the shelter of a deserted park. He collapsed onto a nearby bench, his mind still reeling from the revelation that had shattered his world into a million jagged pieces. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Benson remained lost in the depths of his despair. He knew that he couldn't hide from the truth forever, that eventually he would have to confront the truth and face reality. Benson sat in his dimly lit living room, the weight of his secret pressing down on him like a boulder. He reached for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed his best friend's number. A medical doctor, his friend was his confidant in times of crisis, but this was a crisis unlike any other. When his friend answered, Benson struggled to find the right words. "Hey," he began, I need to talk to you." His friend's concern was palpable even through the phone. "Of course, Benson, what's wrong?" Benson took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to say. "It's about my wife. She's pregnant." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before his friend spoke again, his voice soft but probing. That's wonderful news, Benson. Congratulations." But Benson couldn't bring himself to share in his friend's enthusiasm. I need your help," he confessed, his voice cracking with emotion. I want the pregnancy terminated." His friend's confusion was evident. "Benson, why? This is supposed to be a joyous occasion. Why would you want to terminate your own child?" Benson's heart clenched at the question, knowing that he couldn't give his friend the full truth. How could he explain that his own father, the man he had revered his entire life, might be the one responsible for his wife's pregnancy? The words caught in his throat, and he faltered, unable to find a satisfactory explanation. "I just want the pregnancy terminated, and I trust you can help me do that." "Well, no problem if that's what you want." Benson slipped sleeping pills into Vera's wine, causing her to fall into a deep slumber. He then took her to his friend's hospital, where her pregnancy was terminated without her consent. When Vera woke up in the hospital, she was startled to find her husband glaring at her angrily. Confused, she asked him what happened and why she was there. Benson dropped the bombshell. He knew about her affairs with his father and ensured that the pregnancy, his father's child, was terminated. Vera was covered in shame. She didn't know how to look at her husband's face. She pleaded with Benson that she was very sorry. She confessed to him how she has dated his father for a long time before she met him. She also tried to cut every ties between her and his father, but he refused. Vera was shedding tears, but Benson was mad. "How could you, Vera? So you have been the lady behind my mother's pain all these years. You were into sugar daddy. I'm very ashamed of you, Vera." Vera stood before Benson, her heart pounding with fear and shame. The weight of her confession hung heavy in the air, suffocating her with each passing moment. She couldn't bring herself to meet his gaze, knowing the pain and betrayal that awaited her in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Benson," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "I never meant to hurt you or your mother. I know I've made a terrible mistake, and I hate myself for it." Benson's expression darkened as her words washed over him. Anger and disbelief warred within him, each emotion vying for dominance. "How could you do this to us, Vera?" he demanded, his voice raw with hurt and betrayal. "How could you carry on an affair with my father even after we have gotten married? Did you even consider the pain you would cause?" Vera's heart clenched at the accusation in his tone, her eyes brimming with tears. "I tried to end things with your father, but he refused to let go. I didn't know what to do, Benson. I felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of my own guilt." Benson's anger flared anew at her words, his fists clenched at his sides. "So you're telling me you've been lying to me this whole time? Pretending to love me while carrying on with my father behind my back?" His voice cracked with emotion, the pain of her betrayal cutting him to the core. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Vera. How could you deceive me like this?" Vera's shoulders slumped under the weight of his accusation, her tears flowing freely now. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "But please, Benson, give me a chance to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust and repair the damage I've caused." Benson looked at Vera with a heavy heart. "I can't do this anymore," he said softly. "I can't share my wife with my father." Vera's eyes widened in shock as she processed his words. "What are you saying, Benson?" she asked, her voice trembling. Benson took a deep breath, his resolve firm. "I think you should marry my father instead," he said, his tone final. Vera sank to her knees, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, Benson, don't do this," she pleaded, but he remained resolute. Vera's trembling voice echoed through the phone as she confessed to Benson's father. "Benson found out," she whispered, her words heavy with anguish. "He knows about us." As the gravity of her revelation settled in, Benson's father felt the weight of his actions crashing down on him. The thought of facing his son, knowing he had been sleeping with his wife, filled him with a sickening sense of dread. Images of his son's disappointed gaze and the shattered trust flashed before his eyes. How could he have let things spiral out of control to this extent? Despite the fear and shame coursing through him, he knew he couldn't avoid the inevitable confrontation with Benson. Taking a deep breath, he resolved to muster the courage to confront his son, man to man. With a heavy heart and a mind clouded with regret, Benson's father steeled himself for the difficult conversation ahead. He knew there was no turning back now. With a trembling hand, Mr. Anthony reached for his phone and dialed Benson's number, his heart heavy with the weight of what he knew he had to confess. Benson agreed to meet him. When they finally faced each other, Benson's eyes were ablaze with a mix of hurt and fury. "Why, Dad, why did you do this to me?" he demanded. Mr. Anthony's throat felt dry as he struggled to find the right words. "I'm sorry, son. I never meant to hurt you." Benson's fists clenched at his sides. "Then why did you? Why Vera, of all people?" Tears welled up in Mr. Anthony's eyes as he bowed his head in shame. "We've known each other for 4 years, Benson," he confessed. "And we've been seeing each other, secretly." Benson staggered back as if struck. The betrayal cut deep, slicing through the bond between father and son. "How could you?" he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief and anguish. "I know I've made a terrible mistake," he pleaded. "But please, son, forgive me. I love you, and I never meant to hurt you." "I don't know if I can forgive you, Dad," he admitted, his voice raw with emotion. He found himself caught in the middle of a storm of emotions as his father's words hung heavy in the air. The weight of his father's pleas tugged at his conscience, but the betrayal his mother would face gnawed at his soul. He could see the desperation etched on his father's face, a mixture of shame and fear. As his father begged him not to reveal the truth to his mother, Benson wrestled with conflicting thoughts. How could he keep silent about such a profound betrayal? Yet, he couldn't ignore the pain it would cause his mother if the truth were to come out. The very foundation of his family seemed to crumble beneath the weight of his father's infidelity. In that moment, Benson realized the enormity of the decision before him. He couldn't simply sweep his father's actions under the rug and pretend everything was fine. Yet, he also couldn't bear to shatter his mother's world with the truth. Benson's father pleaded with him not to end his marriage, so his mother wouldn't find out what happened. He was ready to stay off his marriage, but Benson said no. He won't reveal to his mother what had happened, but he can't continue with the marriage, not after knowing his father has been sleeping with his wife. Vera sat alone in the room, tears streaming down her face like a relentless river. The weight of her actions pressed heavily on her chest, suffocating her with remorse and regret. What she once thought was a picture-perfect life had crumbled before her eyes, shattered by the revelation of her affair with Benson's father. It was an abomination, a betrayal of trust that had irreparably damaged her marriage. As she replayed the events in her mind, she couldn't help but wonder how different things might have been if she had only been honest with Benson when she discovered his father was her sugar daddy. Maybe then they could have confronted the truth together, worked through their issues, and salvaged their relationship. But now, it was too late. The thought of facing her family and friends, of admitting the real reason behind the collapse of her marriage, filled her with dread. How could she possibly explain such a shameful truth? How could she bear the judgment and disappointment that would surely follow? In that lonely room, surrounded by the echoes of her own anguish, Vera realized that the road ahead would be long and arduous. But she also knew that she had to find the strength to confront her mistakes, to take responsibility for her actions, and to somehow rebuild her shattered life, one painful step at a time. Living a good life means being cautious about our choices today because they can affect us later. It's important to make decisions thoughtfully and with consideration for their long-term consequences. By striving to do what's right, we can build a future that we're proud of and avoid regrets down the line. Living mindfully involves being aware of how our actions and decisions shape our future. Every choice we make, whether big or small, has the potential to influence our lives in significant ways. By being mindful of the consequences of our actions, we can avoid making impulsive decisions that might come back to haunt us later on.